What would you do if your own daughter-in-law laughed in your face and called you poor without knowing you've been secretly paying her bills all along? I kept my secret for years, but that one sentence changed everything. When I finally told the truth, her reaction was something I'll never forget. It turned our whole family upside down. You won't believe what happened next. Stay with me, because this story takes a turn you'll never see coming. It was one of those Sundays that felt like a warm hug. The kind where the sun peeks through the kitchen window just right, making the dust motes dance in the air, and the smell of fresh coffee mingles with the sizzle of bacon. I'd set the table with my favorite blue and white tablecloth, the one I save for family, and arrange the eggs, toast, and fruit just so. My son Sawyer was already halfway through his second helping, chatting about work and the latest neighborhood drama. Tessa, my daughter-in-law, sat across from me, her phone glued to her hand, thumbs flying as she scrolled through whatever was more interesting than our little family gathering. Now, I've always tried to make Tessa feel welcome. I remember what it was like to be the new woman in the family, trying to find your place, hoping you don't say the wrong thing. So I'd always gone out of my way extra cinnamon in her coffee, her favorite pastries from the bakery, even biting my tongue when she rearranged my living room for better flow. I wanted her to feel at home, to know she was loved. But that morning, something felt off. Maybe it was the way she barely looked up from her phone, or the way she sighed when I asked if she wanted more orange juice. I tried to brush it off. After all, we all have our days, right? Maybe she was just tired, or maybe she was texting her mother about some family emergency. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, as mothers do. We were in the middle of a light-hearted conversation about Sawyer's new boss, who, by all accounts, was a real character, when Tessa suddenly let out a little snort. It was sharp, almost dismissive, and it cut right through the easy laughter. She didn't even look up, just kept scrolling, her lips curled in a half-smirk. Then, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to drop a bomb, she said, "You know, my parents are successful and rich. Not like you. You're, well, poor." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The clink of Sawyer's fork against his plate, the hum of the refrigerator, even the birds outside, all of it faded into a stunned silence. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from sheer disbelief. Did I just get roasted in my own kitchen? I almost choked on my mimosa. And let me tell you, that would have been a real tragedy, wasting good champagne on a Sunday morning. I glanced at Sawyer, hoping he'd say something, but he just stared at his plate, suddenly fascinated by his scrambled eggs. I could see the discomfort in his eyes, the silent plea for me to just let it go. But how could I? I mean, really, ladies, have you ever been so blindsided by someone's words that you had to check if you were still in your own house? That was me, sitting there, wondering if I'd accidentally wandered into a reality show. I took a slow sip of my mimosa, buying myself a moment to think. My mind raced with 1,000 possible comebacks, some sharp, some funny, some that would have made my own mother proud. But I remembered my promise to myself: always keep it classy. I wasn't about to stoop to her level. Not in my kitchen, not in front of my son. Instead, I looked at Tessa, really looked at her. She was still scrolling, her eyes darting across the screen, her fingers tapping out a message. I wondered what she was thinking. What made her say something so cutting? Was it insecurity? Was she trying to impress someone? Maybe even herself. Or was it just a careless comment, tossed out without a second thought? I thought about all the times I'd helped them out quietly, without fanfare. The little loans that never got repaid. The groceries I'd dropped off when they were short on cash. The way I'd covered the mortgage payment that one month when Sawyer lost his job. I never said a word, never asked for thanks. That's what family does, right? We help each other no matter what. But sitting there, listening to Tessa's words echo in my kitchen, I felt something shift. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like a deep, bone-tired disappointment. I'd worked hard my whole life, raised a family, paid my bills, built a home filled with love and laughter. Maybe I didn't have a mansion or a fancy car, but I had something money couldn't buy: resilience, kindness, and a heart big enough to forgive even the most thoughtless remarks. Still, I couldn't let it slide. Not this time. I owed it to myself and, maybe even to Tessa to stand up to show her that worth isn't measured in dollars and cents. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle around me. I caught Tessa's eye, and for the first time that morning, she looked up from her phone, meeting my gaze. I smiled, calm and steady, and said, "Well, Tessa, I guess we'll just have to see about that." And in that moment, I knew the real story was just beginning. Asterisk. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the cool wood press against my back, and let out a slow, measured breath. I could feel the weight of Tessa's words still hanging in the air. It's thick and heavy, like the humidity before a summer thunderstorm. But instead of letting it settle, I decided it was time to clear the air. I smiled, not the forced, polite kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you're about to drop a truth bomb so big, it might just rattle the windows. "Well, Tessa," I said, my voice as calm as a lake at dawn, "if that's the case, I guess I'll stop sending you money every month and paying the mortgage for your house." Now it's their problem. Should have seen her face. I swear, if I'd had my phone handy, I would have snapped a picture for the family album. Right next to Sawyer's first steps, and that time the dog ate the Thanksgiving turkey. Her eyes went wide, her mouth fell open, and for a split second she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Or worse, a canceled Amazon order. I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered the sting of her words just moments before. Sawyer, my sweet boy, turned paler than the mashed potatoes sitting untouched on his plate. He looked from me to Tessa and back again, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "What money?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "What mortgage?" The poor thing looked like he'd just realized he'd been living in a soap opera and missed all the juicy episodes. "Now, let me ask, you ever kept a little secret for the sake of family peace? Sometimes we moms do what we have to do, right? We smooth things over, patch up the holes, and keep the ship sailing, even if it means carrying a little extra weight on our own shoulders. I never thought of it as a burden. To me, it was just what you do for your kids. You help when you can. You give when you're able, and you never, ever make them feel small for needing you." But as I looked at Sawyer's confused face and Tessa's stunned silence, I realized maybe I'd done them a disservice by keeping it all under wraps. Maybe, in my effort to protect them, I'd made it too easy for them to take things for granted. I could feel the old familiar tug of guilt, but I pushed it aside. This was a moment of truth. And sometimes the truth is exactly what a family needs. Tessa finally found her voice, though it was shaky and small. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her bravado slipping away like water through a sieve. "You don't pay our mortgage. My parents helped us with the down payment, remember?" She looked at Sawyer, searching for backup, but he just shook his head. Still trying to process what he'd heard, I set my mimosa down, folded my hands on the table, and looked them both in the eye. "Tessa, I know your parents helped with a down payment, and that was generous of them. But when Sawyer lost his job last year, who do you think made sure the mortgage was paid on time? Who sent you that extra money every month so you could keep up with the bills and not worry about groceries or gas?" I paused, letting the words sink in. It wasn't the bank, and it wasn't a lottery ticket. It was me. Sawyer's eyes widened, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. "Mom, why didn't you say anything?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. I thought Tessa's parents were helping out." Kay shrugged, trying to keep it light, though my heart ached a little. "I didn't want you to feel embarrassed or ashamed. I know how hard you were trying, Sawyer. And Tessa, I know you wanted to keep up appearances. I just wanted to help, that's all." Tessa's face crumpled, and for a moment, saw the young woman she'd been when she first joined our family. Eager, hopeful, and maybe a little scared. I didn't know," she whispered. "I just assumed. I mean, my parents always talk about how much they've done for us." I never thought she stopped, her voice breaking. The room was quiet. It's a kind of quiet that feels heavy and important. I could see the realization dawning on both of them, the pieces finally falling into place. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about love, about sacrifice, about the things we do for family without expecting anything in return. I reached across the table and took Tessa's hand in mine. We all want what's best for each other, I said softly. But sometimes we forget to say thank you. And sometimes we forget to ask for help. That's what families are for. Sawyer squeezed my other hand, his eyes shining with gratitude and maybe a little regret. Thank you, Mom, he said, his voice steady now. For everything. Tessa nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. I shouldn't have said what I did, smiled, brushing away a tear of my own. It's all right, sweetheart. We all say things we don't mean sometimes. What matters is that we learn from it and move forward together. And as the storm outside finally broke, rain tapping gently against the window, I knew we'd weather this one too. Because that's what families do. Asterisk. The silence that followed my confession was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Tessa's jaw dropped so low, I half expected to hear it hit the table. If I'd had a camera, I would have snapped a picture for posterity. Her face was a mix of shock, confusion, and a dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, she'd misjudged the situation. Sawyer, bless his heart, looked at me with those wide, searching eyes he used to have as a little boy when he'd lost his favorite toy. He was waiting for an explanation, and I knew I owed them both the truth, not just the facts. But the heart behind it all. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. For the past 2 years, I began, my voice gentle but firm. I've been quietly helping you both out. Covering the mortgage, sending a little extra for emergencies. Making sure you never had to worry about groceries or the electric bill. I never said anything because I wanted you to feel secure, to focus on building your life together without the stress of money hanging over your heads. I know how hard it is to start out, and I wanted to give you the same peace of mind I wished I'd had when I was your age. Tessa's eyes filled with tears, her bravado melting away faster than butter on a hot skillet. She looked at Sawyer, searching for some kind of anchor, but he was just as stunned as she was. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the memories lining up those months when the bills seemed to magically get paid. The times when a little extra money showed up just when they needed it most. He looked at me, and I saw the realization dawn in his eyes. He finally understood who had really been in their corner all along. Tessa's voice was barely a whisper. I had no idea. I thought my parents were helping with everything. They always made it sound like they were the ones keeping us afloat. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said what I did. I guess I took it all for granted. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. It's all right, Tessa. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. I didn't help you because I wanted recognition or thanks. I did it because I love you both and I wanted you to have a good start. That's what family does. We lift each other up even when it's behind the scenes. Sawyer finally found his voice, thick with emotion. Mom, why didn't you tell us? We could have, I don't know, done something to show our appreciation. I feel terrible that we didn't know. I smiled, brushing a stray tear from my cheek. Oh, honey, you showed your appreciation in 1,000 little ways. Every time you called just to check in, every Sunday brunch, every hug, and I love you. That's all I ever needed. Money comes and goes, but family is forever. I just wanted you to have the chance to build your life without the weight of worry dragging you down. Tessa wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. I was so wrong about you. I let my pride get in the way, and I said things I didn't mean. My parents. Well, they like to talk about their success, but they haven't really been there for us the way you have. I see that now. I gave her a reassuring smile. We all have our strengths, Tessa. Your parents have done a lot for you in their own way. That's something to be grateful for. But sometimes the quiet support, the help that comes without fanfare, is the most important of all. I didn't want to embarrass you or make you feel like you owed me anything. I just wanted you to know you were loved. The room was quiet again, but this time it was a peaceful silence, filled with understanding and a new sense of connection. Sawyer reached over and took Tessa's hand, squeezing it gently. We're going to do better, Mom. We're going to be more grateful, more aware. And we're going to make sure you know how much you mean to us. I laughed, the tension finally breaking. Well, if you really want to show your appreciation, you can start by helping me clean up this kitchen. I swear you two go through more dishes than a Thanksgiving dinner. Tessa managed a watery smile, her eyes shining with gratitude. Deal. And thank you for everything. I don't know what we would have done without you. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. That's what moms are for, sweetheart. We're the glue that holds everything together, even when no one notices. But every now and then, it's nice to be seen. As we cleared the table together, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The truth was out, the air was clear, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly appreciated. Maybe things wouldn't be perfect from here on out. Families never are, but we'd weathered the storm together, and that, I realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. Asterisk. After the storm of emotions that had swept through our living room, a heavy silence settled over the Winslow house. I, Marlene Winslow, sat at the edge of the couch, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Watching my daughter-in-law Tessa, as she stared at the floor, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. My son, Sawyer, hovered awkwardly by the window, glancing between us as if he were a referee waiting for the next round to begin. The air was thick with the unspoken words that had built up over the past few weeks, resentments, misunderstandings, and, most of all, the weight of expectations that had quietly grown between us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Tessa broke the silence. Her voice was small but steady. "Marlene, I'm sorry," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know I've been difficult. I guess I just assumed you'd always be there to help, no matter what. I took you for granted, and that wasn't fair." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "And maybe I made things sound a little better than they are. My parents aren't as well off as I let on. I just didn't want anyone to worry about us." The confession hung in the air, raw and honest. I felt a pang of sympathy for her after all. Who among us hasn't tried to save face to keep up appearances, especially when it comes to family? I reached over and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Tessa, we all make mistakes," I said softly. "What matters is that we learn from them. I'm not perfect either. I know I can be a little overbearing sometimes." That got a small laugh out of Sawyer, who finally relaxed enough to sit down beside us. "A little," he teased, and I shot him a mock glare. But the tension in the room had eased, replaced by something warmer, more forgiving. We spent the next hour really talking for the first time in months. Tessa admitted that she'd been feeling overwhelmed, trying to juggle her new job, the house, and the expectations she thought we all had for her. Sawyer confessed that he'd been so focused on work that he hadn't noticed how much pressure Tessa was under. And I, for my part, owned up to my tendency to swoop in and fix things, even when no one had asked for my help. It was a humbling conversation, but a necessary one. There were tears, yes, but also laughter, especially when Tessa recounted the time. She'd tried to make my famous chicken pot pie and ended up with something that looked more like soup than dinner. "I was so sure I could do it on my own," she said, wiping her eyes. "But I guess I still have a lot to learn." "We all do," I replied, smiling. "That's what family is for." By the time the sun had set, we'd hugged it out, our grievances aired, and our hearts a little lighter. It wasn't a magical fix. There would still be bumps in the road, misunderstandings and disagreements, but we'd taken the first step toward healing. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. Later that night, as I sat in my favorite armchair with a cup of tea, I found myself reflecting on the day's events. It struck me how easy it is to fall into old patterns, to let pride or fear keep us from being honest with the people we love. I thought about my own mother-in-law. How we'd butted heads in the early years of my marriage, each of us convinced we knew best. It had taken time and more than a few truth bombs for us to find common ground. But we did eventually. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was repeating some of those same mistakes with Tessa. The lesson, suppose, is that family isn't about having it all together. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about admitting when you're wrong, forgiving when you're hurt, and laughing at yourself when you try to make chicken pot pie and end up with soup. It's about learning and growing together. So let me ask you, have you ever had to teach someone a lesson the hard way? Or maybe you've been the one learning it. I'd love to hear your stories. After all, we're all just doing our best, stumbling through this messy, beautiful thing called family. Maybe your story will help someone else feel a little less alone, a little more understood. Share your lesson in the comments below. I'll be reading every one. And who knows? Maybe we'll all learn something new together. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the best lessons are the ones we learn from each other. Asterisk.